All right, everybody. Welcome to the Bootcamp Mindset, how the way you think influences your success in tech. My name is Michelle. I'm on the community team at Flatiron School. And in the chat, I do just want to see if we want to know who's joining us today. So if you want to just give us a little hello in the chat and let us know, maybe you're a current student at Flatiron School, maybe you're incoming or a graduate, just so we know who's listening and making sure that we're covering all our bases and who we're talking to today. But while we're taking care of that, I'm really excited to be here with Laura Lacey Thompson from our career services team. Laura's been working with grads for a little bit now at Flatiron School, helping them land jobs in tech. And she is going to be talking about one of the secrets about making a career change. And I don't want to spoil it. So with that, I'm going to pass it on over to her and she'll get into it.
All right, great. Thanks, Michelle. Well, welcome all. And this is going to be what I hope is an interesting conversation for you. And again, as Michelle said, the topic is Bootcamp Mindset, how the way you think influences your success in tech. And for many people, when they think about going into a boot camp or starting a career in tech, maybe their mindset isn't the first thing they think about. Think about skills they have to learn, excuse me, and, not necessarily that mindset is something that needs to be paid attention to. But what we do know about a career in tech is that it requires certain traits and skills like being agile and being flexible and having resilience, and adapting in a variety of ways your approach to things. And so that's all about mindset. So in the workshop, we're going to talk a little bit about how a simple shift in mindset from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, and I'll give you definitions of what all of that means if you're not familiar, but how that can really change you very specifically and help you when you first start your career in a boot camp, as you're looking for a job, as you're starting that job search, and in the future, as you develop your career down the road. So let's get into it. All right, so here's the agenda, quickly, what we're going to talk about. And while I'm going through this with you, I'd love for you to think about, and you can share your answer in the chat if you like. What's your agenda for this workshop? What made you sign up for this? And what do you hope to get out of it? All right, so what we're going to be covering, what I'm going to be taking you through is, first of all, what is mindset definition? What is a fixed versus growth mindset? And that's a very important concept we're going to talk about. How mindset impacts your bootcamp experience, your job search, and your long-term job search. And then a few steps that you could begin to take if you're noticing that you maybe are leaning towards a fixed mindset in some regard, and you want to start to make that shift to a more growth mindset, how you can go about doing that. So Michelle, maybe you could just share with me who we have here, or do we have current students, or?
We got a couple of people here with us, a little quiet. Okay, we got Bree, let us know. Just here to check it out, not a student,
okay,
not a grad, so just
wonderful,
curious, which is awesome. Welcome, Bree.
Okay, great. All
and then,
right.
Yeah, if anyone else, I'm going to drop it in the chat one more time.
Okay.
We got Oscar from Montreal, who is also just here to check things out.
Fantastic.
And we had a couple of other folks join in the last minute or so. So I'm going to give them the chance, but I think we got some people who are just curious.
All right, that's great, because this is a topic that applies to many, many things in life. but we're gonna approach it from attending a boot camp and starting a career in tech. So again, as I said earlier, you might overlook the importance of your mindset in achieving a tech career and achieving success in that career, because a boot camp specifically, it's a very intensive place and you're focusing heavily on what are the skills I need to learn, and I need to learn them quickly. And you have to learn a lot in a very short period of time. So, but there is a misconception that success in technology is solely about mastering those skills, what we would call those hard skills. And so then what you end up doing is prioritizing immediate technical proficiency, which I'm not saying isn't important, but you also need to think about developing resilience, adaptability, and that's what a growth mindset can offer you. The other thing is that as you're starting a new career or learning something intensely that's new, that could be emotionally challenging. And the boot camp experience can be somewhat challenging for people because they don't realize how crucial a positive, growth-oriented mindset is for navigating this entire experience. And so that can prevent them from cultivating that very important skill set, mindset. And for these reasons, developing a growth mindset is as important as developing your technical skills. So let's start by defining what we mean by mindset. I think we all have an idea, but for these purposes, this is the definition we're going to use. And we describe mindset as a fundamental attitude or set of beliefs that shapes how you approach learning, challenges, as well as failures. It influences how you perceive your own abilities and impacts your motivation to grow and adapt in various situations. So your mindset is formed frequently. Many of the beliefs that make up your mindset, they occur, you absorb these beliefs usually in childhood. And what tends to happen then over the course of your life is the way your mind works, it likes what's familiar and it does what it thinks you want it to do. And your mind will try to keep you in your comfort zone because that's what feels safe. Okay, and your mind's job is to keep you safe. So what that means, if we have these beliefs and we like what's comfortable and we do what's familiar and our mind thinks what's familiar, it makes it very difficult to rise to the challenge at an occasion where something is challenging. You have to do something that feels uncomfortable. And entering into a tech career, or any career really, but in this context, tech career, a boot camp, and then going out, finding a job and growing within that career is difficult. And your mindset will almost stop you unless you take the time, become self-aware, and think about changing that mindset to a growth mindset so that you're able to keep on growing, learning, and being more and more successful. Your mindset matters more than you think it does in almost everything you do. It's not just about what you do, but how you think about what you're attempting to do. And in any sort of challenging environment, that's what it's all about. So your mindset shapes every part of your experience, from tackling complex coding tasks, if you're in the boot camp, bouncing back from setbacks that you will inevitably have. And it doesn't just stop the boot camp. The mindset, as I said, will follow you into your job search and throughout your career. So we're going to start. I spoke earlier about the concepts of a growth mindset and a fixed mindset and how they make a difference. So I really want to explore these concepts with you. Some of them might be familiar, but we'll just jump in and go a little deeper. So the concept of a fixed versus a growth mindset It comes from the work of a psychologist called Carol Dweck, and she's the author of the book Mindset, The Psychology of Success. You may or may not have seen it. It's a huge best-selling book. And what she found in the work she did in exploring these concepts is that people who have a fixed mindset believe that their own abilities are something they're born with, and they can't really do much to change them. And as a result, these people might shy away from challenges and maybe get discouraged if they suffer a setback. Excuse me. Now, the contrast is the growth mindset. And people who have a growth mindset believe that they can develop their abilities through effort, persistence, and learning. They welcome challenges and see setbacks as opportunities to improve. They understand that these mindsets and this way of thinking will help them in the context of the boot camp, because it will help them move forward and persevere. So if you think about anyone who's successful at anything, right? Maybe it's an athlete, musician, somebody in business who's very successful, in the tech world specifically. Yes, they might have been born with a certain amount of talent for that thing they do, but the success that they experience isn't just because of their talent. It's based on a belief that they have that that they could get better, that they could improve, that they could excel, and that they could continue to grow and develop. And it's those beliefs that then impact their behavior and how they approach learning and how they practice and are willing to fail and take that failure as an experience of learning and go back and do it again. So talent is only one aspect of success in anything. And the same is true for tech, whether you're in the boot camp or you're in your career. It's all about a belief you have that you're able to change and grow. And as a result, you're going to take different action. You're going to take more action, and failure is not going to stop you. Oops. Sorry, I need to get my slide moving here. All right, so here's another good, really concise explanation of the two things. And these are from that book by Carol Dweck. Believing that your qualities are carved in stone. The fixed mindset creates an urgency to prove yourself over and over again. Whereas in a growth mindset, challenges are exciting rather than threatening. So rather than thinking, oh, I'm going to reveal my weaknesses, you think and you say, wow, here's a chance to grow. And that really sums it up perfectly. That's the difference between a growth and a fixed mindset. So when you think about cultivating a growth mindset, it is essential to your success as a tech professional, beginning with the boot camp experience. So what I want to do now is, given those concepts, I want to move forward and talk about how they specifically would impact you if you were in the boot camp. If you're a student, and I know we have people from a variety of different backgrounds and are here for different reasons. But if we just look at mindset, how it's going to impact that experience. So for example, if you have a fixed mindset, how do you approach challenges? You tend to avoid them. Failure, if you see failure as something that is going to reflect on you poorly, and it's going to reveal your weaknesses or your lack of ability in some way. Now, approach to challenges with a growth mindset is more, you embrace it, you see it as an opportunity to learn and grow, and it's not a threat to you. It's more, when you're in the fixed mindset, you tend to take everything as being very personal to you and exposing whatever weaknesses you have. Where when you approach things from a growth mindset, it's more about, well, this is just part of how I learn, how I grow, how I change, is by having these experiences. And whether I succeed or fail when I'm learning is not really the point. It's how do I continue to learn? So when you have a fixed mindset, your response to failure is you get very discouraged by the setbacks, and a lot of times you tend to give up. Whereas your response to failure with a growth mindset is more seeing setbacks as a natural part of the learning process and a springboard for growth. How do you approach effort with a fixed mindset? You view effort as fruitless when abilities are fixed. So in other words, this is the way it is, this is who I am, and I can't really change, so I'm not going to really try. Whereas attitude towards effort with a growth mindset is, it's important to try. The more I try, the more effort I put in, the more I will achieve mastery and improve. So specifically, if we summarize what it's like in terms of impact on a boot camp, when you have each of these mindsets, we look at, with a fixed mindset, impact in a boot camp is you struggle with the fast pace and the complexity of all the new content that you're dealing with, and likely to give up more easily when faced, for example, with a difficult coding task or different projects. Whereas when you have a growth mindset, you can thrive in a fast pace and in a challenging environment. You're more resilient when you face, say, new programming languages or complex projects. So it becomes really obvious when you think about it in this way, just how important having that growth mindset could be to what you're trying to accomplish. And even more, and if we look at it even more closely, and how, ooh, I just lost my slides. Sorry.
All good. All good.
There we are. No? Uh-oh.
Give it a
Slides. Let me resume share. Sorry about that, guys. So when we look at this in a way of how relevant this is, these skills are specifically within the context of the tech boot camp, the four of the most important skills or attitudes that you need to have are the ability to problem solve, the developing resilience, being able to work on skills and enhance your learning, improving your skills constantly, and being very adaptable. So when you think about problem solving, if you have a growth mindset, it encourages you to be curious as an approach to a problem, which is crucial for when you think about things like debugging or innovating. When it comes to resilience, a growth mindset allows you to persist through very challenging, often frustrating process of learning new technologies or programming languages, and specifically having to learn a lot in a very short period of time. It's very condensed learning. So the more resilient you can be, the more you can bounce back if you have a setback, the quicker you're going to make progress. Another thing that a skill that's really important within a boot camp is continual skill enhancement. A growth mindset allows you to push beyond something that's quite challenging and pursue that skill improvement. And then finally, adapting to new tools and programming paradigms as a direct benefit of nurturing a growth mindset. So again, you can see how these are all very specific to, sorry, I can't move my slides now. Oh, there we go. Specific to the boot camp environment. And after this, we'll talk about how these things impact you as you look for a job, as you go into a job search, and then again, as you develop your career. But I want to offer you some of these self-reflection questions to think about So you can start to identify and think about how you might be able to change if you're leaning towards a fixed mindset somewhat, but you really want to develop more of a growth mindset. So maybe you want to write some of these down. Excuse me. So when it comes to reflecting on recent challenges you've had and how you reacted to them, you could think about a recent time when you faced a difficult problem, either in learning or in your personal life. And did you feel it was something to overcome through effort? Or did you feel it was too hard and perhaps not worth the effort? When you think about your response to failure, when you encounter failure, how do you usually respond? Do you tend to give up and move on to something else? Or do you tend to analyze what went wrong and then try again? What about when it comes to learning new skills? When you're required to learn something new, what's your initial reaction? How do you approach it? And then when you think about how you receive feedback, which can be very sensitive for some people, I know, do you see it as an attack on your abilities, as criticism, or do you take it as valuable information that can help you learn? So I just want to, at this point, before we move on to the next part, I just want to take a minute and see if anyone has a question that they want to put in the chat about anything we talked about so far. I'll just give it a minute if you want to do that before we move on.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to ask a question live, I am able to give folks access to the microphone. So if you do want to hit the raise hand button and ask a question, rather than typing it, just go ahead and raise your hand and I'll find you.
Great.
But I feel like going through those couple of scenarios, Laura, I just couldn't help but be like, oh, I'm the fixed mindset. Yeah, I think a constant struggle, and it is something that I actively have to be mindful of.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, myself included, that like gut reaction to failure is to kind of turn away or go inwards rather than maybe self-evaluate and think about how to approach the problem differently. So I'm excited to dig into this a little bit more.
Yeah, it's true. And I will say that that's a good point that you make, because I think everyone, the one thing that I don't want anyone to be sitting here thinking is that, oh, I'm a fixed mindset, that's it, and be judging themselves, right? Because that's what a person who has a fixed mindset would tend to do, right? So what you want to do, the goal here as you're listening to this and it may be starting to ask yourself some of these questions, is to think about just to sort of like observe your own behavior and try not to judge it. Yeah, I see myself doing that. And again, as I said before, this stuff, a lot of these beliefs are subconscious and they came to us when we were children. So they tend to happen automatically. So the goal here is to become aware so that you could start to change and understand what that behavior looks like. Okay, so I'm assuming we don't have any questions at this point. So I'll move on. So the next part.
Actually, Laura, a question did just pop up.
Great.
Someone wants to know, and this is very much in the context of like maybe you're on a new job.
Yeah.
What do you say to someone who asks, what if you run out of time before you can grow enough to learn those new skills? Like, what if time is an issue, and in the setting of a job, maybe you get fired?
Oh, I see. Well, let's think about that for a second. So if maybe you don't have the opportunity to acquire the skills you need as quickly as you need to, and you end up getting fired, if you have a growth mindset, you would say, well, you're not going to be happy about it, obviously, but then you always have to evaluate any sort of setback, and that would be a setback and a big one. You would think about, okay, what did I learn from this and what can I do differently? And again, it goes back to really evaluating what the circumstances were, observing your own behavior and thinking about how you might change, really.
Right. It's like almost trying to make every experience a learning, a moment for
Exactly,
learning.
exactly. And it's not easy to do. It's not easy to do when you have time pressure and you feel like you need to accomplish things quickly, or there's some other pressure on you. Financial pressure, any kind of thing like that. It's not easy to do, but ultimately, those experiences are going to impact you negatively in the future, or they're going to be an opportunity for you. It's like, that wasn't great, but here's how I could do it better, or here's something I could take away and improve my situation. So it always comes back to that, really. All right, so oops. So what I want to talk about now is the growth mindset and the fixed mindset in the context of a job search. Okay, now I'm specifically, again, talking about tech here, but this can apply to anything. So how does mindset impact your job search strategy? So first thing I want to say, because I am a career coach here at Flatiron, is your mindset I could say it is the most important thing when you are looking for a job, especially when you're changing careers, because failure and rejection in a job search are inevitable. You are not going to get every job you apply for. You are not going to do well on every interview you go on. Not every application or resume that you send in is going to result in an invitation to an interview. So it's there. It's constant. It's happening all the time. And the people who stick with it are the ones who really have this more growth-oriented mindset of, they don't get discouraged, they bounce back, they see an opportunity to learn, they think about what can I do differently. So in the context of the job search, it's critically important to think about how you're going to approach this, what your mindset's going to be. So for a fixed mindset, your approach to the job search would be, you see skills, again, your skills and abilities are static. This is the way it is. This is what I can do. This is how it is. And what that will do initially, it will discourage you from applying for jobs that, maybe are a bit of a stretch or a bit of a reach. You might sort of really limit your possibilities by saying, well, these are the ones where I have, I can tick all the boxes. So these are the ones I'm going to apply for. But if you have a growth mindset, you might see opportunities and say to yourself, well, maybe I don't fit everything here, but I think I have a chance at this, so I'm going to try. And the other way that you'll see this come up is with networking. Networking is a really critical part of the job search. It's something that you have to do. And because it's uncomfortable for a lot of people, if you have a fixed mindset, you're going to find a lot of ways to avoid it. Whereas if you have a growth mindset, again, you'll approach it with, well, this is an opportunity for me to talk to somebody I don't know, possibly someone who can help me. It'll be an interesting conversation. I'll learn something. So you're more likely to do that. And that in and of itself is going to definitely influence not only how well your job search goes, but the length of your job search. If you're avoiding doing things that make you uncomfortable in a job search, it won't work. The other thing that we talked about earlier is rejection. If you have a fixed mindset, you're going to take rejection so personally and see it as a reflection of you and how you're inadequate. And again, leads to you being discouraged and maybe, disengaging completely from your job search. Where if you have more of a growth mindset, you'll see feedback from unsuccessful interviews or applications as constructive criticism. And in fact, you'll even seek out that feedback and you'll take it as an opportunity to learn. When it comes to skill development, with a fixed mindset, you're more inclined to develop, less inclined to develop new skills because you think that you can't really improve. And if you try to learn something new, you're going to be proved to be inadequate in some regard. Whereas if you have a growth mindset, you just, again, you take those setbacks as an opportunity to learn and continue to pursue whatever that thing is that you want to learn. So here again, we talk to the relevance of the growth mindset, specifically with the skills involved in getting a job, which are networking, interviewing, and then continued development of your technical and soft skills. Okay, so when you think about networking, when you have a growth mindset, you're going to be more effective as a networker because you're going to be willing to step out of your comfort zone, engage with people who maybe, are way more accomplished in the field than you are. You'll approach these interactions with curiosity instead of feeling threatened. When you go on an interview and you have a growth mindset, you're going to, again, view this as an opportunity not only to learn, but also an opportunity to present yourself in the most positive light, to tell your story of who you are and what you can do. And you become more adaptable. You easily get that if the first interview doesn't go well, you reflect on it and the next one goes better. Same thing when you're thinking about developing skills, whether it's soft skills, which are communication, team building, resilience, the development of those skills, which are all very important, as well as your tech skills, that all happens way more easily for you when you walk into those situations and approach them with a growth mindset. So we could see in the boot camp how it's going to affect you, the growth mindset, and then here specifically how it will affect you as you go out and initially go for your first job in tech, and then go along through the interview process. So once again, I have some self-reflection questions for you to think about. So this is a big one because nobody likes rejection. And so we all tend to take it to heart to some degree. And that's just part of being human, right? But there is a way to deal with it that's going to be more beneficial to you, right? So think about a time that you were rejected from a job opportunity. How did you interpret that rejection? Did you see it as a reflection of you and, your lack of whatever skills or abilities you think you needed? And how did that affect how did that affect how you moved forward within that job search once you experienced that initial rejection? Secondly, I want you to think about last time you encountered maybe a job listing that interested you, but the skills required were maybe beyond what you already knew. Did you decide not to apply even though you might be excited about the role because you felt like you weren't able to learn those skills quickly enough? Or did you view it as, well, I'm going to try and see what I could do? And then your perceptions of how capable you are. Consider a situation where you received feedback that pointed out areas where you needed to improve. How did you respond to this feedback? Did you feel discouraged about it? Or did you dismiss it as irrelevant? And how might this response be a barrier in the future to advancing your career? So again, think about these questions. This is all about self-awareness so that you can begin to change. Do not judge, whatever your response is. It's an opportunity to learn. So I'll just pause for a second again to see if there's any questions before we move on to the last section. And I'll take a sip of water.
Yeah, none yet. We'll wait a sec. If anyone also not just questions, but any like reactions.
Comments, yeah.
Any
is this ringing true for you?
Yeah. Yeah, something that you had mentioned, Laura, like at the very top of this section, was, not every application is going to go through, or not any interview is going to go well, but also sometimes the interviews do go well, and it truly just comes down to they went with someone else,
Very good
right?
point. Yep.
Sometimes you do everything right.
Yes, I have had that many times with students who will come back, they give me their feedback, it went really well. I think I have a really good chance.
Yeah.
And then they get that email that says, oh, we went another way.
Yeah.
And it's really hard not to take that personally. And initially, even with a great mindset, you might, because you're going to feel disappointed. But again, that's a moment where you have to say, well, that was simply out of my control. I did the absolute best I could, and there was nothing more I could have done to get that job. There was someone who was maybe a bit more qualified for me, and that's sort of, that happened.
Yeah.
But it is disappointing, you're right.
Yeah, sometimes it just comes down to like, oh, the interviewer was in a slightly better mood after having a snack and interviewing someone else.
Or they both loved, I don't know, they both loved a particular type of music, or they both followed a certain sport. And those things can happen subconsciously. It's just, it creates a rapport. And so then you view each other in a more positive way. Again, it's the way your mind works.
Yeah.
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 It really is. Yeah.
So could you actually go back to the previous slide, Laura? We did have a question come in. Tiffany says, feeling discouraged and dismissing as irrelevant would both be wrong answers. Correct. I asked Tiffany if she
she raised her hand.
Yep, we're gonna get her on the mic.
Great, Tiffany. Hi.
All right, Tiffany, can you hear us? I don't think we can hear you.
Oh, I think maybe what she was referring to, maybe I'm wrong. It says, when you got feedback that looked for areas of improvement, are you asking the question, is feeling discouraged or dismissing it as irrelevant, is that a wrong response? I think that's the question. Is that right?
Good catch.
I see Tiffany's here. Can we hear her yet? Tiffany, can you say something? No? Yes, it's not a matter of it being wrong. I would describe it as viewing it that way is not helpful, and it doesn't really serve you. If the goal is to continue to learn and grow and do it better the next time, right? Then dismissing it or saying that doesn't apply to me, rather than just listening to it, absorbing it, and just asking yourself, you could ask yourself, is this really true? Is it irrelevant? Or is it true that I need to improve in that area? But I think it's more about initially just dismissing it and not even considering it, and almost like putting a wall up to it. That's not helpful, and that's not going to serve you if you're trying to improve. So I hope I answered Tiffany's question.
Nailed it.
Okay. All right. Oh gosh, I keep ending up in that place. All right. So the last part I just want to talk briefly here is just considering, so you've learned your skills, now you've gone on your job search and you've landed your job and you're progressing in your career. So how does your mindset affect you there? Okay. So growth mindset and growth in your tech career, how does that affect you? So when you think about moving through your career and being able to continue to achieve and get to the level you want to, there are certain things that you need to do in order for that to happen. And two of them are being adaptable and being a lifelong learner, right? Always being willing to learn. And when you have a growth mindset, those two things become quite easy and natural for you, right? By definition, a growth mindset is having a flexible and an adaptable mindset, and the idea of being ready to take on something new. Same when it comes to lifelong learning, being open to continuously improving your skills and being educated, and that will help you as you go on, especially in tech, how things change so quickly. If you're not ready to sort of jump in and learn something new quickly, your skills become irrelevant and outdated. So by having that mindset of being a lifelong learner, which is a growth mindset, it helps you elevate your profession simply because the industry and the skills you need change so quickly. Other things that you need to do, which we talked about in interviewing, but is still true as you progress in your career, is being able to network and collaborate. When you have a growth mindset, again, those things become just natural things that you do. A growth mindset fosters openness, positivity, helps you with teamwork, making new connections in your career, which is vital. And it also, in terms of learning, you become more open to learning from other people as you collaborate, right? And then another thing you need to do as you progress in your career is expand your professional network and engage in those positive interactions. Listen to ideas that are different from your own. So by expanding your professional network, that's going to enhance the growth of your career. So again, if you're worried about being exposed or that you don't measure up, you're not going to make yourself maybe vulnerable in situations like this, or be willing to take on opinions that are different from your own, and that will hold you back. So again, growth mindset as you move through your career and you want to grow becomes really important, vital to your growth. All right. So finally, I just want to share with you 3 steps about how you can start to cultivate this growth mindset. And so a few things I want to say here again is, this doesn't happen overnight. And like developing any other skill that you want to learn, it takes patience. In this sense, it takes a lot of self-compassion, because if you are operating now from a somewhat fixed mindset, you need to be really kind to yourself and not judge yourself, and just be very open and be self-aware. And again, try to observe your behavior without judging it. But it does take time, it does take consistency and patience, but it absolutely can be done. I do it with my clients every day. So first part of the process is to become more self-aware. You can't change anything in your life without having self-awareness. So the objective here is to start to identify your own personal mindset tendencies and the triggers that would shift you toward a fixed mindset. So even if you're a person who generally may have more of a growth mindset, there may be particular situations in your life that trigger you. I think Michelle mentioned something like that earlier. And so you want to be able to identify what those situations are. And the way you do this is by being really aware and observing your own behavior. One way of doing this is if you're a person who likes to journal. Not everyone does, but journaling is really useful in this context. Keeping a daily journal for a week, maybe when you're experiencing something particularly challenging, right? And recording and just making a note of when you felt challenged or when you had a failure of some sort or a setback, and just noting what your reactions were and how you addressed that situation. And then another thing you could do is just do what's called reflection sessions, where you regularly just schedule some time in your day. Maybe it's at the end of the week, at the end of a difficult week, to think about, what did I learn about myself this week? How did I handle difficult challenges? And I want to say that simply engaging in this sort of, if you did nothing else but this, and just started becoming more aware of how you handle these difficult situations and challenges, you would see your behavior start to change just by keeping track of it and being aware of how you're reacting. You automatically will start to do things differently, and you'll start to feel different, which then, reinforces that new behavior. So that's the first step, but it's the most important one, obviously. Okay. Then the next thing you could do to start to develop more of a growth mindset is to embrace constructive feedback, which is something that a lot of us, we don't really like, but again, critical to this whole process. So the objective here is you want to develop the skills to seek out, receive, and use feedback effectively to help you foster personal and professional growth. So that means asking for feedback, requesting feedback, seeking it from, boss, peer, friends, and thinking about how you phrase your requests for feedback. So example would be, what could I have done better in that presentation? How could I have handled that situation better? So just think about places where you tend to shy away from wanting to hear feedback, and think about asking for it, and also receiving it without taking it personally, as just an opportunity to learn. So that means engaging in reflective listening. Make sure you focus on listening and understanding what's being shared with you. Don't defend yourself. Don't try to justify any mistakes you made. That's not the point. You don't learn from that, but just listening with an open mind and being curious about it. And then also there's something you could do called feedback analysis workshops. And that means that you take all the feedback you've received and evaluate it, just like we did in the prior sort of self-awareness weekly reviewing it. You can step back periodically and look at the feedback you received. And that's also an opportunity for you to see what progress you've made and to understand where you can still improve. So the idea of first self-awareness and then seeking out feedback to help you improve and being open to it, this is how you continue to develop this growth mindset. And then finally, the last thing you want to do is set some goals around the things you want to accomplish. And The type of goals, you may or may not be familiar with SMART goals. A lot of people are. It's pretty common now. But SMART goals are goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So an example here is I will learn to use React.js by completing an online course and building a project within the next 3 months. So you could see how specific it is. You can measure whether or not it's achieved. It is achievable. It's relevant to something bigger that you're trying to achieve, and it has a specific timeline. So I'm going to achieve this goal in a specific time. Then once you create these bigger goals, you want to break them down into smaller and manageable tasks. Achieving goals is much easier, and there's a lot of research on this, much easier when you break it down to small tasks, because again, our brain hates doing what's uncomfortable. If a task is small enough, you won't experience as much resistance to it, and you're more likely to do it. And then final thing is resilience building. You want to set challenges that are a bit of a stretch, not so much of a stretch where they become, I'm never going to be able to do that. And again, your mind will resist. I can't do that, so why should I try? But just something that stretches you a little bit. I was like, even, like example of you go to the gym, and instead of going from, I'm going to lift a weight I started with 5 pounds and now I'm going to 50. It's okay, I did 5 pounds, now I'll go to 7 pounds or 8 pounds or 10 pounds, right? And that becomes doable, and you're much less likely to give up, and you're more likely to continue to try. So these are just the 3 steps. So once again, self-awareness, seeking out feedback, and setting and achieving learning goals. So finally, this is just a summary of everything that we covered. Power of growth mindset in tech, in a tech boot camp, in a job search, and in career development. And so just generally to review, in a tech boot camp, the way a growth mindset serves you is through helping you learn better. It enhances your learning. It helps you boost your resilience among other things, and just helps you persist through difficult challenges and setbacks. In your job search, it helps you cultivate a proactive approach to seeking out opportunities, even when they seem to be maybe slightly more than you think you'd be able to accomplish. And very important, not only in job search, but in life, it strengthens your rejection handling. You learn how to experience rejection less of something personal and more of part of the process, and something that everyone experiences. And then finally, in your career development, it helps you continue to learn, become more adaptable, enhances your ability to network, grow your network and your professional connections, and collaborate with others. So that's all I have, except if anyone has any questions. I'd love to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah.
I know that's a lot in a short period of time, but
I know, I feel like you really maximized the last 50 minutes. There was a lot of juicy information in there.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not only questions or any, I would love to know what people's takeaways were, even from, is there anything that was said that stood out to you or you felt really resonated with you? I'd love to know that as well. So please take a moment to share.
Yeah. I'll pose a question, and it'll be just like a little more general, but you know, you're a career coach here. You work with so many students who are, you know, not just learning something difficult or learning something new, but they are literally getting a new career.
Yeah.
And that I think just involves such a huge mindset shift, especially from maybe if people have a more traditional academic background, right?
Yes.
Think like if you went to a 4-year university, learning in that setting is so different than a boot camp setting where you are trying to learn more tactfully, right? Like very specific skills. So I guess maybe what is one or maybe what one or two pieces of advice for someone who maybe has that type of fixed mindset of like, oh, maybe I was at the top of my class in college and I'm really struggling
Oh, that's a great
in this
question.
program, but it's still school. What's not clicking? What would maybe be your initial reaction to that dilemma? And maybe how would you guide that person?
Well, I would ask them a lot of questions, you know, beginning with trying to get them to understand how different this is. And that we learn, everyone learns differently. And if you've been learning a certain way throughout your whole academic career, and now here you are, and it's
Time to
very,
unlearn.
exactly, it's almost a question of what do you think you need to do differently, or what do you need to unlearn to be able to do this?
Yeah.
So I think I would start with that. And then I would think, you know, just this is my psychology brain. Is there fear around this? Is there some fear of failure because this seems really different? This is very unfamiliar to me. I don't know if I could do this. The idea of exploring maybe what they're afraid of and sort of processing that to the point where they can approach it again with more of a, you know, I might fail initially, but if I keep at it, I'll get there. Because if you were successful in school before, it's just a matter of time and approach that would change it for you, I imagine.
Little bit of grit.
Grit is very important. Do not underestimate grit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Laura, looks like we are at time, but thank
Fantastic.
you so much again for this really thoughtful presentation. Oh, I did see.
Something just popped up.
Yeah. Can CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, be helpful in being mindful of mental triggers to help with cultivating a growth mindset? That's an awesome question.
100%. A lot of this sort of approach of, you know, with CBT, what you do is sort of you identify, you become self-aware, you examine your own thinking, and you identify what the narrative is and what the behavior it is. And then you think about what are the alternative behaviors or thoughts I could put in place of those. So if you tend towards a fixed mindset and you observe that, you say, okay, all right, what could I tell myself that's different that would move towards a growth mindset? And what behavior could I try that would reinforce that new way that I want to think? So CBT, yes, absolutely. CBT is good for any sort of change, mindset change that you want to make. Yes.
That was a great question.
Yeah, thank you for that question.
Yeah,
really
thank
good.
you, James. All right, going once.
I just want to make sure we didn't miss anything. I
Yeah,
think one more comment may have come up, Michelle. I don't know if you can just take a look. I'm watching the count on the chat.
I'm seeing people just saying thank you for your time.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much for coming. And I hope it was useful and that you all took something valuable away.
All right, y'all. Before we head out, I'm just gonna drop our events page. This was so much fun, and we got a calendar full of events for all types of learners and folks who are involved at Flatiron School and part of the community. So head over to that website, and we hope to see you at an event soon.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, take it easy, y'all. Have a great night.